I'm known as Kathy Morgan. Duffy was my maiden name. I was lucky enough to grow up the oldest of 6 kids with a mom who loved to cook and 2 grandmas who loved to cook. Both of my grandmothers, you know, they made a real impact on my life. One was my Irish Nanna, who came from Ireland with her family to New York and met my grandfather when he was tending bar, and he had just come over from Ireland. That was Grandma, Nanna, and Mary Duffy. And then my other grandmother, my mom's mother, originally her family came from Sweden and went to Canada. Grandma, Ruby Goulet, when she grew up, girls didn't go past 8th grade. So her mother taught her how to knit, crochet, sew, and bake.
Nanna made this for me.
And she was a beautiful seamstress. In fact, she made my mom's wedding dress, which my daughter Tricia wore when she got married. She was amazing, and she loved to cook.
And I remember in particular having lunches at my Grandma Goulet's house in South Minneapolis when I was young, and she would always have sandwiches for us and chips and homemade pickles, and I remember the pickles lined the shelves in the garage, and she'd pick off a mason jar of pickles. Grandma
made this rhubarb custard pie, and so we always had the fresh rhubarb from the garden, and that was one of the things she made.
I remember my great-grandmothers always baking and talking about, you know, all sorts of kivenaya or mishta, and your mouth would just start to water immediately.
So this recipe was both my Nanna, the pie crust, and then my Grandma Goulet, the pie itself. You know, it's kind of a custard on the bottom, and you whip egg whites, and then you sort of fold in egg whites and the rhubarb. So you get this nice density on the bottom, on top of a really flaky crust.
So I wanted to do a combination just because they were just really cool ladies, and I have wonderful memories of them. First of all, we start out with the pie crust, and we're simply going to be taking some flour. Take 1½ cups of flour. I try to be really accurate with measuring flour. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get 1½ teaspoons of sugar. You want a little teeny bit of that salty taste in the pie crust. So we're going to add a teaspoon of some really nice sea salt. And then the next step to it, and I've changed a little bit in this. Nanna always used mazola oil. I find that avocado oil cooks really nicely. And I am going to be taking ½ cup. I use 2 different olive oils for flavoring in the pie crust. One is a vanilla bean, or I use a blood orange.
You're the flaky part of it.
I'm the flaky part of this.
I actually really do love this pie that she's making, and I'm the eater. I'm representing the eaters of the family. I'm not a very good cook. For me, cooking has always been about creativity and love, and I think my kids really get that. I hope that that's something that they'll pass on to their friends and eventually their families as well.
Cooking is where we know how to hop in and just support whatever the meal is, but that's our time, and that's when there's so much said without a word being said. It's really special.
Then what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 tablespoons of milk. I either do coconut milk or a lactose-free milk. I try to mix it first a little bit so I don't get the flour all over. And then once you have that pretty much in, then I take my hands and go in, get it in a nice little ball here. I don't want to waste anything, so we want to make sure we get it all together. The next thing we're going to do is to take a pie plate. And what I usually do is just kind of pat it down to get it going. What Nanna always did was to take the bottom of a measuring cup, and she would just kind of smooth it down. You want it to be smooth without cracks. There's no rolling. Nanna hated to roll pies. With Nanna, so when she made dessert, she'd always go, I'm not rolling this pie. That's too much work.
The pie crust is unbelievable, and you guys should write it down and go home and make, because you can make it in 5 minutes, and it's the best pie crust you'll ever have.
I never liked birthday cake. So Nanna and Grandma, when it was my birthday, I got a pie. And she made cakes for everybody else, so we got to eat the whole pie herself. What Nanna always did was to take your thumbs and push together, sort of at the top, and make it pretty. Nanna always did this. She always said, okay, you take your thumbs and you just push them in. If you don't do this, you don't have as much chance of your pie crust burning. So it's all ready. We just took 3 pieces of foil, folded them in half, and connected them. So it'll be all ready once we put the pie in there to stick it in the oven. And then you're going to go ahead and put that right around the outside of the pie. The idea is to try to cover up the sides of the crust. So now Allie's going to put this in the chiller, and we're going to do the rhubarb filling. I lost her recipe and found it about maybe 12 years ago in a little cookbook called the Cabin Cookbook. That's the other thing. My mother loved to cook and did really fun cooking. I've got her recipe book. The recipes I went through and found in there, she'd be writing them. She'd be out to lunch, or she'd be, somewhere. And on the back of an envelope or whatever, she'd write the recipe and stick it in there. This is Heavenly Pumpkin Pie, written in my mom's handwriting. But it would be an early summer that we would have our rhubarb pie when the rhubarb is fresh. Rhubarb can tend to be a little bit tartar, so you do 1/4 of an inch. And we're going to do 2½ cups of the rhubarb. Frozen will do, but when you can pick it fresh out of a garden, it's amazing. I'm going to go ahead and start the egg part of it. We're going to put egg whites separate, and then we're going to take and put the egg yolk in here, and we're going to do that with 3 different eggs. Take this and put it over to the side for a minute. So you're going to take a cup of sugar, and then we're going to do 1/4 cup of butter softened, 1/4 cup of flour, then 2 tablespoons of frozen orange juice thawed, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and I'm pretty careful about measuring the salt because I don't think we need too much. This is what they always used, which was fun. We upgraded, and we have a nice mixer to mix them with today. Plug in the mixer, and how long does it say to beat about?
Beat until light in color.
Light in color. Yeah. Then we're going to just... And then we're going to take 2½ cups of the cut up rhubarb. I'm really lucky because the heritage from my family and my husband's family is pretty amazing. He's Lebanese and Irish, and his mother I loved, and she taught me how to make a lot of the Lebanese food too.
On my dad's side of the family, those memories, I actually remember my great-grandmother more than my grandma. We used to go to her house for Sunday, they called it dinner, but you would eat the best, most amazing Lebanese food.
Our heritage, we make Irish potato cake, we make Lebanese grape leaves, we make heavenly pumpkin pie, we do rhubarb. All of these things are part of our family, and the grandkids are starting to cook. Our oldest grandson's loving it and starting, and I think they all will because they've been exposed to it.
I help her a little bit, but I help her with desserts and baking because I like to bake with her a lot. My younger cousin and I like to bake, so we try to join Nani while we're doing that.
2. I think it's perfect. Go ahead, take your whisk and put the rhubarb into it. What really makes the difference with this pie to make the custard and make the layers is the next thing we're going to do. We're going to take the whisk off, and I'm going to put some beaters in here. And we're going to take the egg whites and beat them fluffy. And once your egg whites are fluffy, you're just going to go ahead and put all the egg whites in there and slowly turn the egg whites into the custard mixture. So then you have this beautiful mixture that is really nice, and we're going to pour it right into the pie.
Once we became mothers ourselves, you see things through a new lens, and it helps you appreciate your own parents differently.
For me, cooking manifests the creativity she has.
She's just this woman who continues to just seize whatever stage of life she's in.
So whenever she's in town, she always makes cookies, and it's always a little bit different.
She comes to my house just to make them and spend time with me because I'm her favorite.
I have the most pictures, so I for sure have the favorite right now.
And we just smooth it out. Then we're going to open the oven and put it in the center of the oven, and the oven is set at 375 for 15 minutes. Then we're going to turn it down to 325. I put a timer on for 30 minutes and check it. And if it's brown on the top and you can touch the top and it bounces back, you know your custard is done.
Tradition for our family is more about spending time with each other.
It is about the food, but it's about the dynamic of preparing the food and setting a beautiful table and bringing people to that table.
Tradition is just kind of like making sure we set aside time to do things together, like throughout the year.
The cooking together is the tradition, and that's what's important. But the family always came together around the table.
I don't know, my family is extremely close. My cousins are probably my best friends at the end of the day.
You know, it's the conversation is the thing that's so important. You sit at the table and you talk longer. You enjoy the meal, but the conversation becomes just so much more delightful.
It is the time when everything else fades away and it's just about family.
For our family, I mean, it really is about time spent. I mean, calling it down, you know, meaning of life is living it.
This is what I'm trying to pass on. The girls have been involved. We have 6 grandchildren. I want them to see some of these things and see where I came from and where their moms came from. So that's what I'm hoping. That's what I want to pass on.
Cheers.